My name's Jade Mercer. I've been away for a while, 2 years to be exact, serving as an intelligence officer with the U.S. Army. When I came back to Washington, D.C., all I wanted was a normal week off. No orders, no missions, no code words. Just my sister, her high-end apartment, and some time to pretend I was a regular person again. It was around 9 at night when my train pulled into Union Station. The place was half empty, the kind of quiet that makes every sound echo like it's suspicious. My sister, Vivian, had promised she'd send her driver to pick me up. She'd gotten fancy, over the years, private driver, corner office, the whole success package. I was happy for her mostly. I just didn't recognize this version of her anymore. Outside the station, I spotted the car easily, a black Lincoln with tinted windows. A man in his 40s stepped out. He looked solid, calm, like someone who'd seen things and didn't panic easily. That's not something most civilians have. "Captain Mercer?" he asked. His voice was low but steady. "Just Jade," I said, setting my duffel bag down. "You must be Caleb." He nodded once. "Your sister asked me to get you home safe." Safe. That word should have meant nothing. But the way he said it, like he was testing it out, like it didn't quite fit, made something in my gut tighten. I brushed it off, climbed into the back seat, and texted Vivian. Got in. On my way. She didn't respond right away, which wasn't unusual. My sister treated her phone like it was optional, unless it was about money. The city outside blurred past in patches of yellow light and late-night traffic. It felt strange being home again. I'd been in places where silence meant danger, and now even the hum of the car made me alert. Old habits die hard. We'd been driving for maybe 10 minutes when Caleb glanced at me through the rearview mirror. "You've been overseas," he said, more like a statement than a question. "Yeah, guess that shows, huh?" "Just the way you watch the exits," he said. "Most people don't do that." I gave a dry laugh. Occupational hazard. We hit a red light. The streets were empty. Too empty. Caleb's eyes flicked to the mirrors again. I noticed it because I do the same thing when I think someone's following me. I leaned forward. "Something wrong?" He didn't answer right away. The light turned green, but he didn't move. He just stared ahead like he was deciding whether to say something or not. Finally, he pressed the locks on all the doors. The click sounded louder than it should have. I froze. "What are you doing?" Caleb looked up at me in the mirror, his expression firm but not threatening. "You're not safe at home." He blinked. "Excuse me?" He reached into the console between the seats and pulled out a phone. "Your sister told me to give you this." "That. Give me, what are you talking about?" He handed it back to me, screen glowing. A call was already connected. I hesitated, half ready to open the door and half ready to grab his wrist if he moved wrong. Then I heard the voice. "Jade?" It was Vivian, breathless, shaky. I'd heard her scared before, but never like this. "Viv. What the hell is going on?" "Don't go home," she said quickly. "Listen to him. Caleb knows what's happening. I can't explain right now, just trust me." Day. "Vivian, are you okay? Where are you?" Her voice broke. "I'm fine, A male voice shouted something in the background, muffled but angry, then static. The call dropped. "Vivian!" I shouted into the phone uselessly. I stared at the dark screen, my pulse slamming against my throat. Caleb didn't move. I leveled my gaze on him. "You better start explaining before I—" He shook his head calmly. "If I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't have called her." "Now, that's not the reassurance you think it is," I snapped. "We can't go to your sister's apartment," he said. "It's compromised." "Compromised by who?" He took a sharp turn off the main road and didn't answer. The tires hummed against rougher asphalt. We were heading toward the industrial district. I debated whether to pull my sidearm from my bag. I hadn't planned to need it on vacation, but old instincts kicked in. "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's going on," I said. Caleb's grip on the wheel tightened. "You wouldn't believe me yet, you'll see soon enough." "Try me," I said. He exhaled. "Your sister's been in trouble. Serious trouble. And now it's found you." "Trouble like what?" Before he could answer, headlights flared in the mirror, bright, close, and fast. A black SUV. Same make, same model. Too close to be casual. I turned. "That car been behind us long?" Caleb didn't even glance back. "Yes." End of press. "You plan on doing something about it?" He gave a half smile. Hold on. He hit the gas. The Lincoln surged forward. The SUV did the same. My seatbelt caught across my chest as we whipped through an intersection. Who are they? I shouted. People who don't want you asking questions, Caleb said, his voice calm but clipped. I looked at the phone again. No signal. Figures. I pulled in a breath, my training kicking in automatically. Left turn in 2 blocks, I said. Then right onto New York Avenue. Cut through Ivy City, less cameras. He glanced at me, a little surprised, then nodded and followed my directions without question. The SUV tried to close the gap, headlights bouncing over us like heat. Caleb took the right hard. I braced myself with one hand against the door. We hit an empty stretch near an old warehouse row. The SUV's engine roared behind us. Then the first impact came a sharp slam against our rear bumper. Son of a... Caleb hissed, steering to stabilize. I grabbed my duffel and pulled out the small canister I kept for field travel. Pepper spray, not military grade, but better than nothing. Keep steady, I said. What are you? Just drive. He did. I rolled down the back window, waited for the SUV to close in again. When it got too close, I sprayed directly behind us, the mist catching their windshield. The other driver jerked sideways, braking hard. Caleb took the chance and veered into a narrow side road. We sped through an underpass, tires screaming. My pulse still hadn't slowed. Finally, after what felt like hours but was maybe 3 minutes, Caleb turned into a quiet alley behind a shuttered community church. He parked under a broken light, breathing hard. Still think you're safe at home? He asked dryly. I glared at him. I'm not sure I'm safe in this car either. He leaned back, rubbing his face. Fair. End quote. I checked my phone again. No signal, no call back from Vivian. My gut twisted. Caleb finally said, We need to lay low. There's a place nearby. She'll meet us there. I studied him for a long second, every instinct telling me not to trust anyone. But the man had just helped me survive a car chase. That earned at least a temporary pass. Fine, I said, voice flat. But if this turns out to be some setup, I swear I'll... He smirked. You'll what? Outrank me? I didn't answer. I just stared at the dark street ahead as he started the car again. The city lights flickered past us, scattered and cold. For the first time since I got home, I wasn't sure what home even meant anymore. Caleb's hand stayed tight on the wheel as we cut through the dark streets. The city looked different at night, emptier, colder, like it had secrets it didn't want to share. My phone still had no signal, but I kept checking anyway, more out of habit than hope. We turned down an alley that smelled like rain and oil. Caleb slowed the car, scanning both ends before easing into a side lot behind a row of boarded-up warehouses. The engine clicked as it cooled. He killed the lights. For a long second, the only sound was our breathing. Who the hell were those people? I asked. Men who work for someone your sister crossed, he said. That's all I can tell you right now. I wasn't satisfied. That's not an answer. He turned to face me. You'll get the full picture soon, but if you keep shouting questions, someone else will get here first. I wanted to snap back, but he was right. The air outside was too still, too expectant. Years of training had taught me what that meant. I glanced out the window. We can't stay here. Caleb nodded once and restarted the car. We rolled out of the alley and onto New York Avenue, headlights off until we hit open traffic again. I watched for tails. 2 blocks later, I spotted a shadow flicker in the mirror, another car pulling out too quickly. Gray sedan, I said quietly. 10 o'clock. I see it. He accelerated, but not too fast. Speed draws attention. He knew that. I started wondering exactly what kind of driver my sister had hired. He handled the car like someone who'd been trained, not just someone who drove for tips. We cut through Ivy City, a stretch of warehouses and small breweries that went dead quiet after dark. I could feel the muscles in my shoulders tighten. The sedan was still behind us, keeping its distance like a professional. Do you carry? I asked. Glove box, he said without hesitation. I opened it and found a compact Sig Sauer. Loaded, clean, ready. Your employer have a license for this? She doesn't know I have it. Good, I said, because if she did, I'd be more worried. A quick grin flickered across his face, then vanished. The sedan's headlights flared again as it closed in. Hold steady, I said. They're lining up for something. The next sound was the screech of tires. The sedan swerved to the left, trying to box us in. Caleb gunned the accelerator. We shot forward, scraping past a delivery truck. The sedan followed, clipping a dumpster and sending sparks across the pavement. "Where are we going?" he asked. "Anywhere with corners," I said. "They can't outmaneuver what they can't predict." He took my cue, weaving through the narrow streets like we were on a time drill. I rolled the window down slightly to get a better look. Cold air rushed in. For a second, I caught sight of the sedan's driver, a man with a shaved head, phone pressed to his ear. "They're not amateurs," I said. "He's relaying." "To who?" "Whoever's paying them." Caleb swore under his breath and yanked the car into a side road that led toward an abandoned freight yard. Rusted train cars loomed like ghosts on either side. He slowed just enough to turn the lights off and coasted between two lines of cars. The silence that followed was almost painful. We waited. The gray sedan crawled past the mouth of the yard and kept going. A beat later, another black SUV cruised behind it. My pulse steadied only a little. Whoever these people were, they weren't giving up easily. Caleb finally broke the silence. "Your sister said you'd know what to do if things went bad." Then, I turned toward him. "You keep talking like she planned this." "She didn't plan it," he said quietly. "She prepared for it." That hit harder than I wanted it to. I'd spent years preparing for worst-case scenarios, but I'd never imagined my own sister living that way. The engine ticked in the cold. My adrenaline was fading just enough for exhaustion to crawl in. "You said she's meeting us?" He nodded. "Safe location. Not far." I leaned back, trying to process everything. "And I'm supposed to just trust that?" "I don't need you to trust me," he said. "Just survive long enough to ask her yourself." That wasn't the reassurance I was looking for, but I didn't have a better plan. We pulled out of the freight yard a few minutes later, taking back roads toward the western side of the city. I watched the skyline shrink and twist in the distance. D.C. looked beautiful and dangerous from this angle, a perfect disguise for whatever the hell was happening underneath. My phone buzzed suddenly. No caller ID. I answered before thinking. "Jade?" It was Vivian again. Her voice was clearer but trembling. "Are you with Caleb?" "Yes, where are you?" "I can't say. They're still watching the apartment, don't go back there." "Who's watching it?" She hesitated. I heard her take a breath, then whisper, "Rinaldi." The name hit me like a jolt of electricity. "As in Marcus Rinaldi, the shipping magnate?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Viv, what the hell did you get into?" "I didn't want you dragged into this," she said quickly. "I tried to fix it myself." "By hiring a driver with a gun?" "By hiring someone I could trust," she said. "He used to work for them. Now he's helping me get out." Before I could ask more, the line went dead again. Caleb gave me a sideways glance. "She tell you?" "She told me enough." "Then you know why we can't go home." "Home's a pretty flexible concept tonight," I muttered. He didn't argue. We turned onto Rhode Island Avenue, the roads widening again. I kept one eye on the mirrors. Everything looked clear for the moment. My body was still running on adrenaline, but part of me was starting to process the absurdity of it all. One minute I was getting off a train, thinking about pizza and sleep, and the next I was dodging bullets and cryptic phone calls. My life had never been simple, but this was a new record. Caleb finally said, "You should know something about your sister." I tensed. "What about her?" "She's not the person you think she is." I turned to look at him. "That's supposed to scare me or prepare me?" He didn't answer, just kept driving. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. We exited onto a smaller road lined with closed shops. The car slowed. I could feel the tension shift in the air again. Quiet, but charged. "Where exactly are we going?" I asked. He pointed ahead. "You'll see that building with the red awning?" I nodded. "Pulls around back. It's one of her old offices. She said it's safe." Safe. There was that word again, taunting me. As the car rolled toward the alley behind the building, I noticed a small security camera above the door. Its red light blinked twice, then went dark. "Was that supposed to happen?" I asked. Caleb frowned. "No." My stomach dropped. The silence that followed felt too heavy, too deliberate. I reached for the gun again and clicked off the safety. Caleb cut the engine. Neither of us spoke, but we both knew the same thing. Whatever was waiting inside wasn't safety. It was just the next move in someone else's game. The building looked harmless enough, just another two-story brick office wedged between a pawn shop and an old diner that hadn't seen customers since the Obama years. Caleb parked in the alley, lights off, and checked the side mirror before getting out. The quiet was heavy. I followed him to a back door that looked like it hadn't been used in months. He keyed in a code and the door clicked open. Inside smelled like dust and lemon cleaner, the kind landlords use before showing a place they know no one will rent. We stepped into a narrow hallway that opened into a small office space. Old desk, blinds half closed, a couch that had seen better decades. Caleb kept his voice low. Stay near the window, but out of sight. I'd double. Anyone else supposed to be here? He didn't answer, just moved to check the other rooms. My instincts told me to follow, but something made me stop. The hum of the fluorescent light above us was faint, but I could hear another sound under it breathing. The door at the far end opened, and my sister walked out. Vivian looked nothing like the woman in her corporate photos. Her hair was tied back, her eyes bloodshot, her clothes wrinkled. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Jade," she said softly, her voice cracking a little. I froze for half a second before crossing the room. We hugged, tight and awkward. For a moment, all the noise in my head went quiet. Then I pulled back and asked the question that had been burning since the car ride. What the hell is going on? Vivian glanced at Caleb, then back at me. You should sit down. Last time someone said that to me, I ended up in a war zone, I said, but I sat anyway. She sank into the chair across from me and took a long breath. I didn't want you involved. I really tried to keep you out of it. Out of what? Her eyes flicked toward Caleb again, and he gave her a small nod. You might as well tell her, he said. Vivian rubbed her temples. Do you remember Marcus Rinaldi? I frowned. The shipping guy? Mom testified against him years ago. She nodded. He's out, and he wants payback. I felt the back of my neck prickle. You're telling me this man waited years just to come after you? Not just me, she said quietly. Us. I leaned back in my chair, the air suddenly too thick. You think this has to do with Mom's death? I don't think, she said. I know. Caleb leaned against the wall, arms crossed. She's been getting messages for months, threats, anonymous calls. Then someone broke into her apartment 2 nights ago. Vivian nodded. They didn't take anything, just left a file on my kitchen counter. And what kind of file? I asked. She opened her purse and pulled out a manila folder, sliding it across the desk. Inside were printed emails, bank statements, and copies of contracts with her signature. Except they weren't hers. These are forgeries, I said immediately. They're not just forgeries, she said. They're evidence, fake evidence that I helped Rinaldi's company launder money. If this gets out, I'm finished. My firm's finished. And you, I cut her off. I don't care about my reputation. I do, she said sharply, then softened. You don't understand. He's not trying to ruin us publicly. He wants to erase us. Like Mom. I looked over the papers again, the numbers too clean, the formatting too precise. He's using legitimate records mixed with forged data. Whoever did this had access to your systems. Vivian nodded slowly. Someone on the inside. I just don't know who. Caleb stepped forward. That's why we needed you, Jade. You have training. You can see what we can't. I met his eyes. You talk like you're part of the family now. He didn't blink. Your mother helped me once. Years ago. I owed her. The words landed like a brick. You knew my mother? He nodded. I worked security for a logistics company she investigated. She saved my ass when Rinaldi tried to pin a shipment on me. After that, I left that world. Vivian spoke up. When the threat started, I remembered his name from one of Mom's old notes. I tracked him down. I didn't know he still had connections. I took a slow breath, trying to piece it together. So you hired him to drive you, and to protect you. She nodded. It wasn't supposed to get this bad. The clock on the wall ticked loud in the silence that followed. I hated that sound. It made everything feel like a countdown. Does anyone else know you're here? I asked. Vivian shook her head. Just Piper Shaw. She's with Homeland Security Investigations. I sent her copies of the threats last week. Did she respond? She said they were monitoring Rinaldi, but she warned me he's got people everywhere. I rubbed my eyes. And you didn't think to tell me this before I got on a train to your city? I thought if I handled it quietly it would go away, she said, her voice cracking. I didn't want to drag you back into Mom's mess. That's not your decision to make. The words came out harsher than I intended. She flinched, and for a moment I saw not the successful businesswoman, but the same sister who used to beg me to sneak her out past curfew. Caleb broke the silence. It's late. We should rest while we can. Vivian nodded, standing up. There's a small room in the back. You can use it. I stayed where I was. I'm not sleeping until I understand how deep this goes. You won't figure it all out tonight, Caleb said. Try me, I said, my tone flat. He sighed and opened the blinds slightly, peering out. The street outside was empty, but the hair on my arms rose anyway, the kind of quiet that meant someone was watching. I joined him at the window. Across the street, under a dim streetlight, a white sedan sat idling. The driver's face was shadowed, but he wasn't looking at the road. He was looking at us. Viv, I said without turning. You expecting anyone? She came closer, saw the car, and froze. No. Caleb pulled the blinds shut. We move. Now. Vivian hesitated. We can't just… Yes, we can, I said, already grabbing my bag. If they found this place, it's not safe anymore. Caleb was already by the door, checking the hallway. The lights flickered once, then came back on. That tiny glitch sent adrenaline through me like a shot. Vivian, go, I said. She didn't argue this time. We slipped out the back, moving fast and low. The air outside was colder now, carrying the smell of rain and exhaust. As we reached the car, a soft pop echoed in the distance, like metal under pressure. Caleb froze. That wasn't thunder. I scanned the alley, my pulse hammering. Engine still warm. They're close. He unlocked the car. Get in. Vivian climbed into the back seat. I scanned the roof lines before sliding in beside her. The white sedan's engine roared to life at the end of the alley, headlights cutting through the dark like searchlights. Caleb hit the gas before the sound reached us. The tires screeched as we tore out onto the main road, the other car following close behind. Vivian grabbed my arm, her voice shaking. They won't stop, Jade. Then neither will we, I said, eyes locked on the mirror as the headlights grew larger. Caleb's jaw clenched, the muscles in his neck tight as wire. Hold on, this is going to get ugly. The night swallowed his words as the car surged forward into the storm of city lights ahead. Rain started to fall in thin, sharp streaks that smeared the windshield faster than the wipers could clear them. The city blurred into a wash of red lights and wet asphalt. Caleb drove like someone who'd done this before, fast enough to stay alive, slow enough not to crash. Vivian clutched the handle beside her door, whispering something under her breath I couldn't hear. Lose them, I said, scanning the mirrors. I'm working on it, Caleb muttered, taking a hard turn into a side street lined with old row houses. The sedan behind us followed but overshot the corner, its tires sliding over the slick pavement. Caleb didn't waste the chance. He cut down an alley and out onto a service road that ran parallel to the train tracks. The engine growled, but my focus was on the sound of sirens far off in the distance. Cops wouldn't be helpful. They never were when Rinaldi's people were involved. After a few minutes of silence, the headlights behind us disappeared. Caleb slowed, his hands still tense on the wheel. We're clear, he said. For now, I answered. Drive somewhere quiet. He nodded, heading toward the east side of the city. The streets got emptier, the lights dimmer. The rain turned into a steady sheet, muffling the world into something half unreal. We finally pulled into a small auto shop with a faded sign that read Grant's Repairs. Caleb parked in the back under a metal awning and killed the engine. Vivian looked pale. Is this place safe? As safe as anything tonight, Caleb said. She didn't seem reassured. Neither was I. I turned toward her. You said Mom's death wasn't an accident. Tell me everything. Vivian stared down at her hands for a moment. After the trial, she kept getting calls, unknown numbers. She never talked about them, but I heard her once, telling someone to leave us alone. A week later, the crash happened. The police called it mechanical failure. Her car didn't fail, I said quietly. Vivian's voice dropped. No, someone cut the brake line, but they buried it. The report disappeared. The mechanic who worked on it moved out of state. My chest felt tight, like all the air had been pulled out of the room. And Rinaldi walked free. He had connections everywhere, she said. Mom's testimony got him 5 years, but that wasn't the end. His company Rinaldi Freight kept operating under new shell names. Harborstone, my firm, got involved years later without knowing it. When I found out, it was too late. How involved? I asked. She hesitated. Enough that if anyone saw the records, they'd think I was complicit. Caleb leaned forward. Rinaldi uses legitimate businesses as fronts. Vivian's firm was a cover. He ran money through international contracts, fake freight routes. That's why he wants her quiet. I turned to him. You sound like you've done your homework. He didn't blink. I used to drive for one of his clients. Before your mother's case. The silence that followed felt heavy, like something thick you couldn't swallow. Vivian shifted uncomfortably. You said you owed Mom. What did she save you from, exactly? Caleb's jaw tightened. She found proof that Rinaldi's crew was smuggling more than cargo people. I was the one who reported it to her, but he tried to frame me. She testified for me, said I was her source. It ruined her career and nearly got her killed. Vivian's eyes widened. You never told me that. She didn't want you to know, he said. I rubbed my forehead. And now he's out, coming after everyone connected to her. Exactly. Vivian stood and began pacing, her hands shaking. We need to find something that ties him to the forgeries. If I can prove the records were planted, I can take this to the authorities. I looked at her. Authorities won't move on a word. You need evidence that can't be explained away. I have something, Caleb said. But we'll need access to Harborstone's servers. Vivian stopped pacing. They're locked down. Every system is monitored. I can get around that, I said. They both looked at me. I worked cyber intel for 2 years, I continued. If we can get into the network, I can pull logs, timestamps, and trace the IP signatures from whoever uploaded the falsified files. That's enough to start a federal investigation. Vivian hesitated. That means breaking into my own office. Then it's a good thing you're the boss, I said. Caleb cracked a faint smile. She's right. Vivian looked between us, then sighed. Fine, but we do it tonight. If Rinaldi's watching, we don't get a second chance. The rain outside picked up, hammering the awning like a warning. I checked my phone again. Still no service. Caleb moved to the trunk, pulling out a black duffel bag. Inside were a few essentials. Extra clothes, a small toolkit, a burner phone, and a first aid kit. Grab what you need, we travel light. Vivian frowned. You keep that in your car all the time? He shrugged. You'd be surprised how often it comes in handy. I slipped the burner into my pocket. What's the plan once we get in? Vivian explained quickly. My office has a side elevator that opens to the finance floor. Security cameras reset every 10 minutes. If we move between rotations, we'll stay invisible. Caleb nodded. And if not? Then we're trespassing in a high-security investment firm at 2 a.m, I said dryly. So let's aim for option A. Vivian almost smiled. It was small, but it reminded me of her before all this, before money and fear had taken the easy laughter out of her voice. We drove across town with the headlights dimmed. The rain had washed most of the streets clean, leaving the world reflective and hollow. When the Harborstone Tower came into view, its glass facade glowed like something alive. Vivian used her badge to open the underground garage. The scanner beeped green. We parked near the freight elevator. Caleb checked the corners before stepping out. I followed, keeping my steps light. Vivian swiped us in again, the elevator doors sliding open with a soft chime that felt too loud. When we reached the 12th floor, the building was dead silent. The hum of air vents and the low flicker of computer monitors were the only sounds. Vivian led the way to her office. Once inside, I set up on her desk, booting her computer into admin mode. You're lucky your IT department never updated your access protocol. She looked over my shoulder. You can really do this? I can try, I said, typing fast. The system protested once, then folded. Lines of data flooded the screen. There we go. Ends free. Caleb watched the doorway while I dug through server logs. What are we looking for? File creation history, access points, user IDs, I said. If someone inside forged these, they left fingerprints. 10 minutes later, I found one. An access record from an external device, timestamped 3 days after Vivian's supposed signature date. I highlighted it, tracing the address. The origin came from a local IP registered to Baltic Trade Consulting, Rinaldi's shell company. Caleb said quietly. Vivian stared at the screen. He's using my firm's network to move data. He's inside the system. Before I could respond, the lights flickered again once, then twice. A warning ripple ran down my spine. Caleb turned to the door. That's not a power issue. I stood, hand on the gun. The elevator dinged softly in the distance. Vivian's voice dropped to a whisper. Someone else is here. I-6. The sound of footsteps echoed faintly down the hall, deliberate and slow, the kind that didn't belong to a janitor. Caleb's eyes met mine. We need to move. The footsteps grew louder. Vivian's monitor cast just enough glow for me to see her face drained, terrified but defiant. I unplugged the flash drive, stuffed it in my pocket, and reached for the door handle. Caleb already had his hand on his gun. The hallway outside was empty, but the elevator doors were closing. Whoever had come up wasn't sticking around, they'd already done what they came to do. Vivian stepped forward, her voice shaking. They wiped the system. The monitors blinked once, then went black. Caleb exhaled sharply. They knew we'd come. And just like that, every trace of proof we'd found vanished into the dark. The office filled with the faint smell of burnt circuits, that chemical tang that follows a full system wipe. The screens went dark one by one, until the whole floor was a reflection of the city outside, empty glass and blinking exit lights. I could hear Vivian's breathing go uneven behind me. They erased everything, she whispered. Not everything, I said, holding up the flash drive I'd yanked seconds before the blackout. We still have this. Caleb took it carefully, tucking it into his jacket. We need to leave now. They'll be checking security feeds. I shut down the terminal, even though there wasn't much left to shut. Vivian just stood there, staring at the empty screen like it had betrayed her. Viv, I said sharply. Move. She blinked and followed as we hurried down the corridor. The hum of the building's ventilation seemed louder than it should have been. Caleb led us toward the freight elevator at the end of the hall, the same one we'd come up on. The doors slid open before we even hit the button. A man stepped out. He was tall, clean-cut, dressed in maintenance coveralls, but the way he carried himself screamed otherwise. His eyes locked on us, cold and focused. Caleb reacted first, grabbing Vivian by the arm and pulling her back. I moved forward, gun raised, hands where I can see them. The man smirked. You don't want to do that. Try me. He shifted his weight just enough that I caught the glint of metal in his hand. Before I could fire, Caleb lunged, knocking him into the wall. The gun clattered across the floor. They struggled, each blow echoing through the hall like gunfire. Vivian screamed, and I moved fast, kicking the man's weapon out of reach. He twisted, slamming Caleb into the metal door. Caleb grunted, but didn't let go. I stepped in and hit the guy across the temple with the butt of my pistol. He went down hard, motionless. Caleb wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, breathing heavy. You hit like you mean it. I had good instructors. I meant. Vivian stared at the unconscious man. Is he one of Rinaldi's? Caleb nodded. Owen Pike. Used to run security for one of Rinaldi's docks. Now he's freelance muscle. Vivian backed away, her voice trembling. How did he find us? He didn't, I said. He was already here. Caleb checked the man's pockets, pulling out a badge clipped to a Harborstone lanyard. Night shift credentials. He's been inside your company for weeks. Vivian covered her mouth. Oh God, no. He's not dead, Caleb said, checking the man's pulse. Just out cold, but he won't stay that way for long. I crouched beside the fallen gun and picked it up. Serial number scratched off. Professional. I slid it into my belt. We're leaving. Caleb motioned toward the stairwell. Elevators are a trap now. Stairs to the garage. We moved fast but quiet, our footsteps echoing in rhythm. I led, Caleb in the rear. Every turn of the stairwell tightened the space around us. When we reached the bottom, I cracked open the door. The garage was mostly empty, just a few late-night cars, a janitor's cart, and the sound of rain hammering the pavement outside. Caleb pointed toward his car. We were 10 steps away when a voice called out from behind a concrete pillar. Leaving so soon? The man who stepped into view was dressed in a gray suit, his tie loosened but his posture perfect. His face was familiar from old headlines, Marcus Rinaldi. Older than in his mugshots, but still sharp around the eyes. Vivian froze. Marcus. He smiled thinly. Vivian Mercer. I was wondering when you'd stop hiding behind your little walls of money. I stepped slightly in front of her. If this is about your reputation, you picked the wrong family to threaten. He chuckled. Oh, I'm not threatening anyone. I'm correcting a mistake your mother made years ago. She thought she could destroy my business. She was wrong, and now you're about to learn the same lesson. Caleb lifted his gun. Don't. Rinaldi didn't flinch. You think shooting me changes anything? I built people like you. Then you should have built them better, Caleb said. I pulled Vivian toward the car. Enough talking. Rinaldi's smirk never faded. You can run tonight, but every name, every number tied to that firm, it all leads back to you. You've already lost. And, of course, I opened the car door for Vivian, never taking my eyes off him. We'll see. Caleb reversed hard, tires squealing against wet concrete. Rinaldi stepped back, completely unfazed. He didn't chase. He didn't need to. The message was clear, we were already in his net. The drive was silent except for Vivian's quiet sobs. Her hand trembled against her lap. He was right, she said. He's got everything. Every document points to me. Even if we survive this, I'll lose everything I've built. Now, you'll lose more than that if we stop now, I said. We find proof he's behind this, we take him down. Her voice cracked. And if we can't? I didn't answer. There wasn't anything useful to say. Caleb finally broke the silence. There's a contact we can reach Homeland Security. Piper Shaw. She's been tracking Rinaldi's financial fronts. Vivian nodded slowly. She called me last week. Said she needed physical evidence, not just threats. Then we get it, I said. We've got one lead left, the flash drive. Caleb patted his jacket. Still here. Good, I said. Then we move before he decides to come for us himself. We reached the outskirts of the city, where the streetlights thinned into patches of fog and shadows. Caleb pulled into a self-storage complex that looked deserted, the kind of place no one notices until it's on fire. Inside one of the units was a small set-up folding table, 2 chairs, an old laptop. Vivian blinked. You've done this before. Caleb gave a half smile. Let's just say I learned not to trust safe houses owned by other people. I powered up the laptop and plugged in the flash drive. The screen flickered to life, and lines of encrypted data filled the display. Vivian leaned over my shoulder. What is all that? Transaction logs, I said. Dozens of accounts. Some real, some fake. He's been routing money through NGOs, foreign shell companies, even private hospitals. And they're one. Using medical transport routes, Caleb added. Classic Rinaldi move. I decrypted one folder and froze. Viv, your name's on 3 of these transfers. She went pale. Those aren't mine. I know, I said quietly. He's setting you up for money laundering. These files are the planted evidence. Caleb leaned closer. Can we prove it? Maybe, if we match the file creation times with Rinaldi's offshore accounts. Vivian backed away, her voice barely steady. I can't believe this. I thought I could fix it quietly. I thought I could outsmart him. Welcome to the part where that stops working, I said. She didn't respond. She just sat down, her head in her hands. Caleb checked the door. We'll need to move again soon. Once they realize the wipe didn't kill everything, they'll trace the backup. I looked up from the laptop. There's a way to hit him back faster. How? Caleb asked. We leak it to Piper, I said. She'll know what to do with it. Then, Vivian lifted her head. You'd trust a federal agent with this? I trust people who want Rinaldi in prison, I said. That's as close to loyalty as we're going to get. Caleb nodded. Then let's get her the data. I hit send. The progress bar crawled painfully slow, every second stretching longer than it should. The rain outside got heavier, drumming against the metal roof. Finally, the screen flashed. Upload complete. I exhaled. It's done. Caleb turned from the window. Then we need to disappear for a bit. Vivian stood, her voice shaking. Disappear where? He looked at me, then back at her. Someplace Rinaldi won't think to look. Your mother's old property outside Annapolis. It's off-grid. Vivian frowned. That place hasn't been touched in years. I grabbed the drive, pocketed it, and looked toward the rain-dark road beyond the window. Then it's the perfect place. Caleb nodded once. Let's move. In Ned. He opened the door, and a gust of wet wind hit the room, carrying the smell of diesel and mud. I caught the faint reflection of headlights sweeping across the far end of the lot. Vivian froze. Tell me that's not... Caleb raised his hand. Stay quiet. The sound of tires slowed outside, gravel crunching under weight. I moved toward the window, just enough to see. 2 dark SUVs, engines idling, lights off. Guess he didn't wait for morning, I said quietly. Caleb's voice was calm but sharp. Back door. Now. Vivian grabbed her coat, and we slipped into the shadows between the rows of storage units, the rain masking our steps as engines rumbled closer. The rain was coming down in heavy sheets, drumming against the metal doors as we slipped through the narrow rows of storage units. The sound covered our footsteps, but the headlights cutting across the lot told me the men outside weren't guessing. They knew exactly where to look. Caleb led us toward the fence on the far side. I could hear engines idling close behind, the crunch of boots on gravel. Vivian's breath came fast. How many? Too many, Caleb said. Stay low. We reached the back fence, a 6-foot chain link topped with barbed wire. Caleb crouched and pulled a bolt cutter from his jacket pocket, like it was just another tool in his daily routine. The metal snapped under pressure. Go, he said. Vivian climbed first. Her shoe slipped on the wet metal, and I caught her by the arm before she fell. We made it over, landing in mud on the other side. Caleb was last, dropping down beside us just as flashlights cut through the darkness behind the fence. Voices shouted. A gun cocked. Run, he said, already moving. We sprinted through the brush, branches clawing at our clothes. My boots sank into the wet ground with every step, but I didn't stop. The rain was so loud it drowned out the shouting behind us. We reached the edge of a service road, where Caleb's backup plan sat waiting a beat-up gray pickup truck that looked like it belonged to someone who fixed fences for a living. Your backup? I said, sliding into the passenger seat. Always have one, he said, starting the engine. The truck coughed twice before roaring to life. We pulled onto the road, headlights off, heading north toward the old highway. Vivian was silent in the back seat, her arms wrapped around herself. The rain streaked across the windows, blurring the world into streaks of gray and red. After 10 minutes of silence, Caleb finally spoke. They're not going to stop now. Rinaldi knows we have something. That means we hit him before he hits us. I turned toward him. You said Piper can use the data. She can, he said. But she'll need more than numbers. She'll need a name, a location, a statement tying him directly to the accounts. Vivian leaned forward. I have that. Owen Pike, he was Rinaldi's go-between. Every transfer went through him. Caleb nodded. Then we make him talk. She hesitated. He tried to kill us. That makes him more likely to know what's next, I said. If we find him first, we control the conversation. Caleb gave me a side look. You sound like someone who's done this before. I have, I said. We stopped at a gas station just outside the city. The place looked half abandoned, one flickering light above the pumps and a vending machine buzzing like a dying wasp. Caleb filled the tank while I ducked inside to grab coffee and check my phone signal. Still no service. I tried the burner and a message popped up instantly, an unknown number with one line of text. Piper Shaw. Use this channel. I replied quickly. Data sent. We're compromised. Need contact. The response came within seconds. Meet at 4th and Calvert, 5 a.m. No police. Trust no one. I tucked the phone into my pocket and headed back to the truck. Who was it? Caleb asked. Piper, I said. She wants to meet before sunrise. Vivian's voice was small. Is it safe? Nothing's safe anymore, I said, but it's better than waiting to be found. Caleb nodded, pulling back onto the highway. Then we'll use the time we have. He handed me the flash drive. If they catch us, that's the only thing that matters. You guard it like your life depends on it. End quote. It already does, I said. We drove in silence until the lights of DC reappeared on the horizon, faint through the rain. I stared out at the wet road, trying not to think about the things my mother never told us. Vivian had always been the strong one. Confident, organized, unshakable. But now she looked hollow, like everything she'd built had cracked open overnight. She finally broke the silence. Mom testified against Rinaldi because she thought the truth mattered. She lost everything for it. She didn't lose, I said. She just didn't get to finish the job. Caleb's grip tightened on the wheel. Then maybe it's time we do. By the time we reached the intersection Piper had mentioned, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The streets were empty, except for a lone streetlight buzzing weakly over a row of parked cars. Caleb pulled into an alley, killed the lights, and waited. At exactly 5, a silver sedan rolled up to the curb. A woman stepped out, tall, sharp-featured, wearing a windbreaker that looked more functional than fashionable. Piper Shaw. She glanced around once before approaching the truck. Caleb cracked his window. "You alone?" "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't," she said. "You have the data?" I handed her the drive. She slipped it into a portable scanner she pulled from her jacket pocket. The device beeped once, then again. "This is real," she said. "Where did you get it?" Vivian's voice trembled slightly. "From my company. They used it to frame me." Piper looked at her. "Rinaldi's been moving funds through at least 3 financial fronts tied to Harborstone. This proves it." Caleb leaned closer. "Then shut him down." "It's not that simple," she said. "I can't use this without corroborating testimony. I need someone willing to go on record." Vivian looked at her feet. "You mean me?" "Yes," Piper said. "If you testify, I can get a warrant tonight. Without that, this stays buried." Vivian hesitated. I could see the conflict play out behind her eyes, the risk, the fear, the memory of Mom's name in every newspaper headline. Caleb said quietly, "You don't owe anyone silence anymore." Vivian exhaled shakily. "Then do it. I'll testify." Piper nodded, sliding the flash drive into her pocket. "I'll make the call. Stay off the grid until I contact you." End of. As she turned to leave, Caleb asked, "You trust your own people?" Her eyes flicked toward him. "Not all of them." Then she was gone. We sat there for a minute, the quiet pressing in again. Vivian's hands were shaking in her lap. "You did the right thing," I said. She gave a bitter laugh. "Feels more like I just signed my death warrant." Before I could answer, Caleb's phone buzzed. He frowned at the screen. "Unknown number," he said, answering cautiously. "Yeah?" A distorted male voice came through, mechanical but cold. "You shouldn't have sent that file. You've made things worse." Caleb stiffened. "Who is this?" "You know who I am," the voice said. "And you know I don't make empty threats." Vivian's face drained of color. "Rinaldi." The call cut off. Caleb tossed the phone onto the dashboard. "He's tracking us." I checked the rearview mirror. A pair of headlights had appeared at the far end of the street. No sirens, no honking, just a silent, steady approach. "Drive," I said. Caleb didn't hesitate. He floored it, the tires skidding on the wet asphalt. The pursuing car sped up too, headlights bouncing across the rain-slick street. Vivian grabbed the seat in front of her. "He found us already?" Caleb's voice was tight. "He never lost us." We cut through the narrow downtown roads, the sound of engines echoing between the buildings. I kept watch behind us, the glow of headlights growing closer. Caleb took a sharp turn and sped toward the river. The bridge ahead glistened with rain and streetlight glare. "They'll box us in if we cross?" I said. He nodded. "We're not crossing." He braked hard, turning into an old industrial yard. Rows of rusted cargo containers stretched out like a maze. Vivian looked out the window, terrified. "What are we doing?" Caleb's eyes were steady on the mirror. "Setting a trap." "Lun." He stopped near the back of the yard and killed the lights. The pursuing car slowed, headlights sweeping the area. I reached for my sidearm. Caleb pulled a pistol from the glove box and handed it to Vivian. "Just in case," he said. She stared at it like it was radioactive. "I don't—" "Point and pull," he said. "You'll remember if it matters." Outside, doors slammed. 2 men stepped into the rain, flashlights cutting through the dark. Caleb looked at me. "You take left." I nodded. The air smelled like metal and oil. My heartbeat matched the rhythm of the rain. The men fanned out, moving toward the truck. One of them called out, "We just want the woman." Vivian flinched. Caleb mouthed the word wait. They got closer 20 feet, 10. Caleb's hand tightened on the trigger. The first man stepped into the open, raising his weapon. The sound of gunfire cracked the air, sharp and fast, followed by the echo of boots splashing through puddles. I ducked behind a crate, aiming at the second man as he swung his flashlight my way. One shot dropped him. Caleb took out the first. The echoes faded, replaced by rain and Vivian's ragged breathing. "You all right?" I called. "Yeah," Caleb said. "They won't be calling for backup." Vivian climbed out of the truck, still holding the gun with shaking hands. Is it over? I looked at the bodies cooling in the rain. Not even close. 1. Caleb walked toward the container yard's gate, checking for movement. The river wind carried the faint sound of traffic somewhere far off, a reminder that the rest of the city had no idea what was happening here. He turned back to us, his voice low. We just bought ourselves time. Nothing more. The rain eased, but the air felt heavier, thick with the kind of silence that meant the next move had to count. Caleb's boots made soft, wet thuds as he crossed the yard, scanning for movement. The headlights from the other car had gone dark, and the only sounds left were the wind and the faint hiss of rain dripping from the cargo containers. Vivian was still standing near the truck, soaked to the bone, her hands trembling as she held the gun pointed at the ground. You can put that down now, I said. She looked at me like she hadn't heard. Then, slowly, she lowered it, her shoulders sagging, as if the weight of the weapon had finally caught up to her. Caleb approached us, checking the perimeter one last time before holstering his weapon. They'll send more, he said. We can't stay here. Vivian's voice cracked. Where do we go now? Every time we run, they find us. I wiped rain from my face. We go where they don't expect us to home. Her eyes widened. You're insane. Maybe, I said. But if Rinaldi thinks we're scared, he'll keep chasing us until we break. We turn it around. Make him think he already won. Caleb studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. She's right. If we want to end this, we need to draw him out. Vivian shook her head. You're talking about baiting him. I'm talking about taking control, I said. He's expecting panic. We give him something else. Caleb looked toward the truck. We'll need a plan, and fast. Vivian's voice softened, but there was something sharp underneath. And what if your plan gets us all killed? I met her eyes. Then at least we stop running. I know to. The silence that followed was heavier than the rain had ever been. Caleb broke it first. We need to dry off and regroup. I know a safe house on the outskirts, old military contact of mine. No digital trail. We drove through the night. The city lights faded behind us, replaced by open highway and long stretches of dark forest. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind exhaustion and silence. Vivian sat in the back seat, staring out the window. Every few minutes, I'd catch her reflection in the mirror, calm on the surface, but her jaw set tight. By the time we reached the safe house, dawn was creeping in. The building looked like it hadn't been touched in years, a cabin tucked behind rows of pine trees, its roof sagging but solid. Caleb parked around the back and checked the locks. Inside, the air was stale but warm once we lit the old furnace. Vivian wrapped herself in a blanket and sat near the window, watching the woods. I leaned against the table. We need to talk. She didn't turn. About what? About what you're not saying. Vivian finally faced me. You think I've been hiding something? I think you've been trying to protect something. There's a difference. Her eyes narrowed, tired but alert. You want the truth? Fine. I didn't just work with Rinaldi's companies by accident. I knew who they were when I signed the contracts. Caleb stopped unpacking and turned toward her. You what? Vivian's voice dropped to a whisper. I thought I could control it. I thought if I kept close, I could steer it away from anything illegal. I needed the money, Mom's hospital bills, the mortgage, the lawsuits after her testimony. I thought I could handle it. I stared at her, disbelief tightening my chest. You kept that from me? She shot back. You were overseas. You had your own life. I was the one picking up what she left behind. That doesn't make it right. Naupel. No, she said, voice trembling. But it made it possible. Caleb exhaled slowly. So when Rinaldi came back, he didn't just want revenge. He wanted control of what you already built. Vivian nodded. He owns half of Harborstone through shell companies. If he goes down, so do I. I stepped closer. That's why you didn't tell me sooner. She looked away. I didn't want you to see me like this. I wanted to stay angry, but I couldn't. Not when she looked so small, so hollowed out by guilt. You think Mom would have wanted this? You hiding, apologizing for surviving? Vivian's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Mom would have wanted us alive. That's all I'm trying to do. Caleb leaned against the doorframe. Then you'll have to trust us if you want to stay that way. She nodded slowly. The furnace crackled, filling the silence. The smell of damp wood and smoke hung in the air. Caleb spread out a map on the table, tracing routes with his finger. Rinaldi's base of operations is still the same, he said. Dockside warehouses near the bay. But he's moved his meetings to private estates safe, hard to infiltrate. If we want him, we need him exposed. Vivian walked over, studying the map. What about Pike? He's the link between us. I looked at Caleb. You said he used to handle Rinaldi's freight. He'll have records, ledgers, GPS logs, schedules. He does, Caleb said. And I know where he keeps them. Where? He hesitated. An old armory, converted into a front office for logistics. He used to call it his war room. Vivian frowned. And you just know that because? Because I built part of the security system, he said flatly. Before I knew what it was for, I gave him a look. You're full of surprises. Not the fun kind, he muttered. We planned fast. Caleb would get us in through a maintenance tunnel. I'd pull the digital files while Vivian looked for anything physical contracts, paper trails, photos. The plan was reckless, but clean. When night fell again, we drove toward the city. The closer we got to the docks, the thicker the air felt heavy with diesel, salt, and tension. The armory sat on the edge of an industrial park, surrounded by high fencing and floodlights. We parked 2 blocks away. Caleb led the way through a narrow drainage tunnel, water up to our ankles, the smell of rust and mold thick in the air. Remind me again why I let you talk me into this, Vivian whispered. Because hiding didn't work, I said. We reached a grated exit near the back of the armory. Caleb used a small cutting torch to slice through the bolts. The metal groaned as it came loose. Inside, the space was half office, half warehouse rows of metal desks, scattered crates, and a faint hum from computers still running on backup power. Caleb checked his watch. We've got maybe 20 minutes before patrol. I moved toward the servers, plugging in my flash drive. Lines of code flickered on screen. There's a secondary backup here, I said, encrypted but accessible. Vivian sifted through a cabinet, pulling out folders. Some of these are fake names, some aren't. Look, this one's signed by one of Rinaldi's offshore firms. Caleb looked up. Get copies of everything. We worked fast, the quiet broken only by the clicking of keys and the occasional shuffle of paper. My stomach was tight, but my focus stayed locked on the screen. Then a soft beep echoed from somewhere near the entrance. Caleb froze. Motion sensor. Vivian's eyes went wide. They know we're here. Grab what you can, I said, yanking the drive from the computer. We bolted toward the exit, but a voice came over the loudspeaker, low, measured, and unmistakable. Still chasing ghosts, Mercer? Rinaldi. Vivian stopped cold. He's here. Keep moving, Caleb barked. We sprinted through the maze of crates. A gunshot cracked behind us, the sound bouncing off concrete. A round struck a metal beam inches from my shoulder. Caleb fired back, covering our retreat. I grabbed Vivian's arm and pulled her toward the exit door. She stumbled once, but didn't stop. We burst into the rain-soaked yard, headlights cutting through the dark as black SUVs screeched around the corner. Caleb shouted, left toward the fence. We ran. Tires screeched. Someone yelled behind us. The next gunshot came closer, slicing through the air beside my ear. Vivian tripped, landing hard on her knees. I spun back, grabbed her under the arm, and hauled her up. Caleb was already at the fence, cutting through with the bolt cutters. Go, he yelled. Vivian climbed first, hands slipping on the wet wire. I followed right behind her, heart hammering. As I reached the top, I looked back and saw Rinaldi standing under the floodlights, calm and perfectly dry, a phone in his hand. His voice carried through the rain. You can run, soldier, but family doesn't disappear. Caleb yanked me down to the other side before I could respond. We hit the ground running. The night swallowed his voice, but the words clung like a threat we couldn't shake. Something meant to follow us no matter how far we went. Rain whipped against my face as we sprinted through the empty lots behind the armory. The sound of tires screeching and distant shouting faded, but I didn't stop to look back. The city lights were a smear of white behind the storm, and every breath came out raw in my throat. Caleb led the way through a narrow break in the fence line, his jacket torn, his breathing steady, like someone who'd done this too many times before. Vivian stumbled once, cursing under her breath, clutching the folders to her chest. Her hair stuck to her face, soaked and wild. "We can't keep running like this," she gasped. "Keep moving," I said. "We'll stop when we're not targets." "Oh." Caleb slowed long enough to glance over his shoulder. "There's a drainage ditch up ahead, cuts toward the docks. We can lose them there." We slid down the muddy slope into knee-high water that smelled like oil and rust. The world narrowed to a tunnel of darkness and metal echoes. My boots sloshed with each step, and every sound felt too loud. Vivian whispered, "You think he saw us?" "He doesn't need to see us," Caleb said. "He already knows where we'll go." We followed the ditch until it opened under a bridge. The rain poured through the gaps above, hammering the water below like a drum. Caleb crouched, scanning both directions. "We stay here for now. They'll sweep the main roads first." Vivian sank down against the wall, shivering, clutching her knees. "He knew we'd be there. The armory. He was waiting for us." "Yeah," I said, which means someone told him. Her head snapped up. "You think Piper?" "No," I cut in. "If she wanted us dead, she wouldn't need Rinaldi to do it." Caleb's voice was low but certain. "He's got someone on the inside. Always does." I pulled out the flash drive, wiped the water off with my sleeve. "Then we get this somewhere safe before we lose it." Caleb nodded. "I know a way to move it off-grid, but we'll need equipment and luck." Vivian leaned forward, her eyes dark and glassy. "You still think luck's on our side?" "Not luck," I said. "Stubbornness. Might." The storm began to ease after a while, the rain turning to mist. When we finally crawled out from under the bridge, dawn was spreading pale light across the skyline. The air smelled like iron and gasoline. My clothes clung to me like a second skin. Caleb hailed a passing pickup, waved the driver down with the confidence of someone who looked like he belonged anywhere. The man didn't ask questions, just saw the cash and let us ride in the back. We didn't talk until the truck dropped us off near a shuttered diner on the edge of the harbor. Inside, the lights flickered, the coffee smelled burnt, and the waitress looked like she'd seen worse nights than ours. Caleb paid for 3 mugs and a pot of coffee, and we took a booth in the back. Vivian stared at the table, silent. Her fingers tapped against the folder she'd grabbed from the armory. I could tell she was replaying everything. Mom, the trial, the crash, the lies. Caleb leaned forward. "You got something in there worth the blood we just spilled?" She slid the folder toward him. "You tell me." He opened it carefully. Inside were handwritten notes, account codes, and a single photograph Mom, standing in front of a courthouse, a younger Vivian beside her. Behind them, blurred in the crowd, was Marcus Rinaldi. Caleb's jaw tightened. This was taken before his sentencing. Vivian nodded. "Mom said she saw someone from his crew that day, but she never said who." I took the photo, studying it. "Look at the background. That man behind Rinaldi's suit, badge on his lapel." Caleb leaned closer. "Federal agent. He's not escorting Rinaldi, he's talking to him." Vivian's voice was barely above a whisper. "You're saying he had someone in law enforcement protecting him even then?" "I'm saying this isn't new," I said. "Mom didn't die because she testified she died because she kept digging. The silence that followed was the kind that presses on your chest until it hurts." Caleb looked up. "If this is real, then Rinaldi's not the end of the line. There's someone higher." Vivian rubbed her temples. "And how exactly do we fight someone inside the system?" "With proof," I said, "and people who can't be bought." Caleb chuckled dryly. "That's a short list." And we left the diner an hour later, the folder wrapped tight in plastic, the flash drive tucked inside my jacket. The morning air was thick with fog, the kind that muffles sound and blurs distance. Caleb pointed toward the marina. "There's a maintenance shed near the waterline. We can reroute the data through a satellite uplink, no digital footprint." We followed him down the boardwalk, the smell of salt water mixed with the diesel stench of fishing boats. Gulls circled overhead, crying out like they knew something was about to break. The shed was small and empty, but Caleb moved through it like he'd used it before. He powered up an old terminal and connected the drive. Lines of code filled the screen again. "Transferring encrypted backup," he said. "Once this is done, even if Rinaldi finds us, he won't be able to touch the evidence." Vivian leaned against the wall, still pale. "And what if he finds Piper before that?" "Then we finish it ourselves," I said. The upload hit 70% before the sound of footsteps outside froze us in place. Caleb's hand went to his gun. You expecting anyone? I shook my head. The door creaked open. A tall man stepped inside wet coat, calm eyes, not armed. At least not visibly. He raised a hand. Easy. I'm not here to start something. Caleb aimed anyway. Then you'd better start talking fast. The man looked at me. You're Captain Jade Mercer, right? My stomach dropped. Who wants to know? Agent Reese, Internal Affairs. I was working with your mother. Vivian's eyes widened. That's impossible. She never mentioned you. She couldn't, he said. If she had, she'd have been killed sooner. Caleb didn't lower the gun. Prove it. Reese reached into his coat slowly and pulled out a badge. It looked real, but I'd seen enough counterfeits to know that didn't mean much. He placed it on the table, then slid an envelope across. Your mother gave this to me before she disappeared. Said her daughters would need it one day. Vivian hesitated before taking it. Inside were 2 items, an old key and a folded note written in Mom's neat handwriting. If this reaches you, I failed to finish what I started. The truth isn't in the files, it's where it began. Vivian looked up. Where what began? Reese's voice was low. The first testimony, the one the court sealed before the trial even started. The one naming the agent who buried Rinaldi's case. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. And you want us to believe you're not part of that? He met my eyes. If I were, you'd already be dead. Caleb finally lowered his gun, but only slightly. So where's the rest? Reese nodded toward the key. That opens a safety deposit box in DC First National. But be careful, it's monitored. Someone's been checking that box every 6 months since your mother's death. Vivian's hands tightened around the key. Then we go tonight. Caleb shook his head. Too obvious. They'll expect it. Reese turned toward the door. You don't have much time. Rinaldi's cleaning house. He's cutting ties with every connection he ever had, including the one inside the bureau. You have one chance to take him down before the trail goes dark. And pray. He stepped into the fog, disappearing as quietly as he'd arrived. Vivian held the key like it was made of glass. You think he's telling the truth? Caleb shrugged. Doesn't matter. If there's even a chance, we follow it. I looked out toward the gray horizon. The storm had passed, but the sky still hung heavy, thick with something waiting to break. Then we finish what Mom started, I said. Caleb powered down the terminal and pocketed the drive. We'll need a car, disguises, and a way to disappear once we open that box. Vivian nodded, her voice steady for the first time all night. Whatever's in there, it ends with him. Caleb gave a dry laugh. Or it starts something worse. I looked at both of them, then out across the marina, where the fog was beginning to lift. The light caught the water just enough to show ripples spreading outward, slow, deliberate, like something big moving beneath the surface. And somewhere in that silence, I could almost hear Mom's voice again, quiet but clear. Don't stop until it's done. By the time we hit the city limits, the fog had thickened again, wrapping the skyline in a dull gray that made everything look distant and wrong. Caleb drove without speaking, one hand steady on the wheel, the other drumming lightly against his thigh. Vivian sat beside me in the back seat, clutching Mom's key like it might vanish if she blinked too long. I stared at it, too brass, worn down at the edges, with the faint engraving of FNB 314. Nothing special, nothing shiny. Just like Mom, simple on the outside, but sharp enough to cut through anything when she needed to. First National opens at 9, Caleb said quietly. We'll go in through the lobby, nothing fancy, blend in. Vivian's voice was brittle. And if they've got eyes inside? Then we make sure they're looking the other way, I said. We stopped at a strip mall on the edge of town to grab clean clothes from a thrift store, nothing flashy, just enough to pass for a pair of office workers and their driver. Caleb picked out a pair of glasses and a cheap windbreaker that made him look like every other guy waiting for his coffee order. I found a blazer that didn't quite fit and tied my hair back. Vivian pulled her hair into a bun and borrowed a dull gray scarf. The disguise wasn't perfect, but it was enough to look like people who belonged somewhere. By 8:45, we were parked 2 blocks from the bank. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles that reflected the morning light. The city looked normal, people with umbrellas, dogs on leashes, baristas serving commuters, but every normal thing felt like camouflage for something bigger. Caleb stayed in the car, watching from across the street. You've got 15 minutes. If anything feels off, walk out. Don't talk, Don't run, just walk. Vivian nodded, her hands trembling slightly. 15 minutes. We stepped into the marble lobby. It was quiet, too quiet for a weekday morning. A handful of tellers stood behind the counter, their smiles mechanical. A security guard near the door barely glanced up from his phone. Vivian walked to the front desk. Hi, I need access to a safety deposit box. Box number 314. Hat. The clerk asked for her ID, ran it through the system, then smiled in that polite, empty way that made my stomach tighten. Of course, Miss Mercer. Right this way. He led us down a hallway toward the vault area. The carpet muffled our steps. I caught a glimpse of the cameras overhead, new, upgraded, too new for this kind of bank. Vivian looked at me, eyes flicking nervously. I gave a small nod. The clerk opened a heavy door and gestured inside. You'll have privacy. Let me know if you need assistance. He left, and the door closed behind him with a dull click that sounded too final. The room was cold, sterile rows of metal boxes stacked floor to ceiling. Vivian found 314 and slid in the key. It turned smoothly. Inside was a small leather pouch. Nothing else. She opened it carefully. Inside were 2 USB drives, a folded document, and a photo mom again, but this time, she wasn't smiling. She was standing in front of a military building, holding a classified folder. Written across it were the words, Operation Halberd. Vivian's brow furrowed. What the hell is this? I took one of the drives and held it to the light. It was military issue, encrypted. This isn't banking data. This is intel. Caleb's voice crackled through the small earpiece we'd set up before coming in. Talk to me. We found files, I whispered. Looks like something Mom pulled from her time with the military clinic. Operation Halberd. There was a pause. Then Caleb said, Get out. Now. Why? Because that name doesn't belong in a civilian vault. It's a classified mission from 15 years ago, and anyone still attached to it won't want it resurfacing. Vivian shoved the drives into her coat pocket. Too late to leave it behind. I grabbed the pouch and started toward the exit. We were 10 feet from the vault door when it opened from the other side, not by the clerk, but by 2 men in suits, one flashing a badge. Miss Mercer? The first one said calmly. I'm Agent Rowe with Federal Security. I'll need to see what you've removed from that box. Vivian froze. This is my mother's property. Rowe smiled like he'd heard that line before. And your mother was under federal investigation at the time of her death. That property is evidence. I stepped between them. You got a warrant? He glanced at me, his tone going from polite to sharp. Who are you? Someone who's leaving. He reached for his radio. I grabbed Vivian's wrist. Run. We bolted past him. The second agent lunged, catching Vivian's sleeve, but I swung my elbow into his ribs and kept moving. Alarms went off somewhere behind us, echoing through the marble hall. The guard at the front shouted, but Caleb was already there. The car screeched up to the curb as we burst through the glass doors. Go, 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 I yelled. Vivian dove into the back seat, clutching the pouch. Caleb floored it, tires screeching as we tore down the street. Who were they? He asked. Federal Security, I said. And they wanted the files before we could even read them. Caleb's jaw tightened. So she was into something deeper than Rinaldi. I looked at the photo again. Mom wasn't just a nurse. She was part of a military operation. Something that went wrong. Something worth killing for. Vivian pressed her hand over her mouth, eyes wide. You think Rinaldi's connected to that too? Caleb nodded. He's a contractor. Government black ops, logistics, smuggling under federal protection. Halberd might have been one of his. The road curved along the Potomac, sunlight flashing across the windshield. I could see the tension in Vivian's reflection, not fear this time, but realization. She tried to expose him, she whispered. And when she couldn't, she hid what she found here. Caleb checked the rearview mirror. We've got a tail. I twisted around. A black SUV, unmarked, same make as the ones from the docks. Federal or Rinaldi? I asked. Doesn't matter, Caleb said. They're the same thing now. He swerved off the main road and into a side alley. The SUV followed, engine roaring. I braced against the dashboard as Caleb cut through a service route leading to an underpass. Vivian shouted, You can't outrun them forever. I'm not planning to, he said. He slammed the brakes and spun the wheel. fishtailing the car sideways across the narrow lane. The SUV screeched to a stop inches away, headlights glaring through the windshield. Caleb jumped out, gun drawn. "Stay down." Two men climbed out of the SUV suits again, but this time they weren't holding badges. Vivian ducked low. I slid out the other side, gun ready. The air smelled like burned rubber and rain. "Hand over the drives," one of the men said. "Come take them," Caleb said. The first man raised his weapon. I fired once, not to hit, just close enough to make him flinch. Caleb used the moment to move, knocking the second man back against the car. The gun clattered away. Vivian screamed as one of them pulled a knife. Caleb caught the man's wrist mid-swing and slammed him into the hood. The blade dropped with a metallic clang. I stepped forward, gun aimed. "Enough." The first man froze, chest heaving. He wasn't trained like Caleb, too aggressive, too messy. "Who sent you?" I asked. He glared at me, blood on his lip. "You don't even know what you're holding." "Then enlighten me." He smirked, and for a second, I could see something almost pitying in his eyes. "You think this is about your family? It's not. Your mother opened the wrong door. You're just cleaning up her mess." Before I could respond, he lunged not at me but toward the SUV. Caleb fired. The man dropped instantly, hitting the pavement with a dull thud. The echo faded, replaced by the sound of Vivian's breathing and the faint click of rain returning. Caleb holstered his weapon. "We can't stay here." I nodded, grabbing the pouch from Vivian's lap. The photo inside was damp, the ink bleeding slightly, but Mom's eyes were still sharp, still steady, like she was looking straight at us. "Then we finish what she started," I said quietly. "All of it." Caleb didn't argue. He just started the engine again, the headlights cutting through the mist as we pulled back onto the empty road, the folder still warm in my hands and the truth feeling heavier with every mile we drove. The hum of the engine filled the car, low and steady, like a sound that kept you tethered to reality. The city was behind us now, replaced by stretches of farmland and long, unlit roads that twisted through the woods. Caleb's hands were tight on the steering wheel, his knuckles pale. Vivian sat beside me, silent, staring down at the photo again, the one of Mom holding that classified folder. The leather pouch sat between us on the seat, still damp, still holding the drives that had already cost us too much. I watched the road ahead, trying to ignore the ache in my arms, the sting in my ribs, the exhaustion that came from knowing sleep wasn't safe anymore. Caleb broke the silence first. "There's an old military network still running underground veterans who don't answer to DC. Not officially. If Halberd's real, someone in that network will know." End quote. "Will they talk to us?" I asked. "They'll talk to me," he said. "I used to be one of them." Vivian looked up sharply. "You were in the same operation?" Caleb didn't answer right away. His jaw worked as if he was chewing over something he didn't want to say. "Not Halberd itself, but I ran cleanup for its aftermath. Medical evacuations, quiet ones." I leaned forward. "What kind of operation needed cleanup?" He exhaled through his nose. "Biotech research. Human field testing. They called it medical rehabilitation. It wasn't." Vivian's face drained of color. "Mom worked at a military hospital." "Exactly," he said. "She must have seen something. Maybe she documented it. Maybe she took evidence. That's why Rinaldi wanted her silenced. His company wasn't just running logistics for criminals, they were shipping classified materials." Vivian covered her mouth. "And she got caught in the middle." Caleb nodded once. "And now you are too." Deaded. We pulled into a gas station on the edge of a small town, the kind of place that only existed between destinations. I went inside to grab bottled water while Caleb topped off the tank. The air inside smelled like burnt coffee and old magazines. I paid in cash, kept my head down, and walked back out into the crisp air. Vivian was leaning against the car, watching the empty road like it was about to come alive. "Do you ever think," she said quietly, "that maybe Mom didn't want us to find any of this? That she left it buried for a reason?" I twisted the cap off my bottle. "Yeah. But she also left a key." Vivian looked at me, her voice low. "She died because she believed people would do the right thing. But they didn't. Not then. Not now." I didn't argue. The truth was sitting right there in her words, heavy and bitter. Caleb finished pumping gas and slid behind the wheel. We've got another hour before we reach the contact. Who is he? I asked. Name's Vaughn. Used to be a sergeant. Now he runs an airfield no one talks about. Vivian frowned. And he'll help us? Caleb smiled grimly. He owes me. We drove through the back roads until the highway signs disappeared and the pavement turned to gravel. The night sky stretched above us wide, empty, and full of stars that didn't care about any of this. The air smelled of pine and motor oil. When we finally reached the airfield, it looked abandoned. A strip of cracked asphalt, a rusting hangar, and a chain-link gate held together with a padlock that had seen better decades. Caleb got out and whistled once, low and sharp. From the shadows, a man appeared, broad shoulders, graying beard, cigarette glowing faintly in the dark. You've got nerve showing up here, he said. Caleb smiled faintly. Good to see you too, Vaughn. Vaughn's eyes flicked to me and Vivian. Who are they? Friends of someone who died trying to do the right thing, Caleb said. We need help. Quiet help. Vaughn snorted. That word doesn't exist anymore. Still, he unlocked the gate and waved us through. Inside the hangar, the air smelled of fuel and dust. A small plane sat in the corner, half disassembled, surrounded by toolboxes and maps. Vaughn closed the door behind us and gestured toward the table. Talk. Caleb dropped the pouch on the table. Operation Halberd. Yes. The name changed Vaughn's face instantly. The grin vanished. That's not a ghost you want to chase. Vivian stepped forward. Then tell us why. He rubbed a hand over his face. It wasn't supposed to exist. They were experimenting with neural conditioning, turning soldiers into programmable assets. Rinaldi's company built the transport network. Your mother treated the subjects when it went wrong. When it went wrong? I repeated. He nodded grimly. They lost control. The subjects started collapsing, seizures, hallucinations, total mental breakdown. Your mother blew the whistle internally. They buried the report. A few months later, the facility burned down. Vivian's voice was barely audible. And she kept the evidence. Vaughn met her eyes. She tried to save what she could. I heard rumors she sent part of the data off-site. I took out one of the drives. Then this might be what she saved. Vaughn reached for it, but Caleb stopped him. No offense, old friend, but trust doesn't come easy these days. Vaughn held up his hands. Fair. But if you're planning to use that, you'll need to decrypt it. And that's not something you do on a laptop. He walked to the far wall and pulled a tarp off a metal cabinet. Inside was a server rack, humming faintly. This still runs on an old military network. I can give you 15 minutes before it pings DC. Caleb nodded. Do it. I plugged the drive in. Lines of code filled the monitor, cascading too fast to follow. Then the screen froze. Access restricted. Authorization required. A prompt flashed. Voice verification. Dr. Rosa Mercer. Vivian inhaled sharply. Mom's voice. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. She left it locked to her own signature. Vaughn frowned. Without her, that's a dead end. Oh. I remembered the recording, the one I'd captured accidentally. The night this all started, when Victor's old phone had played my mother's voice through the car. I still had the file. Maybe not, I said, pulling out my phone. I scrolled through the files until I found the clip. Her voice came through the small speaker, clear and calm. Please leave my daughter out of this. The computer blinked once, twice, then unlocked. Vaughn whistled. Well, I'll be damned. The folders opened. Dozens of reports filled the screen case files, transfer manifests, names of military personnel and civilian contractors. At the bottom of the list was one final file, labeled Rinaldi Correspondence. I opened it. Emails, transcripts, voice memos, direct communication between Rinaldi and a federal agent named Rowe. Vivian gasped. That's the man from the bank. Caleb's jaw clenched. He's not federal security. He's the handler. I scrolled to the last message. It was dated 3 days before Mom's death. Rinaldi, she's still talking to internal affairs. Handle it before she makes noise. Rowe, consider it done. Vivian's voice cracked. They killed her. Caleb didn't look away from the screen and covered it as an accident. I felt something deep inside me break and rearrange, grief twisting into something harder, colder. Vaughn leaned forward. You've got what you need. Send it to someone who can bury him legally before he buries you. I saved the files to a clean drive and disconnected it. No more running. Vivian's eyes were wet but steady. No more hiding. Caleb nodded toward Vaughn. You never saw us. Vaughn gave a humorless smile. I never see anything anymore. We stepped out into the night again. The sky had cleared, and for the first time in days, stars were visible, bright, sharp points cutting through the darkness. Caleb started the car, the new drive sitting on the dash between us like something radioactive. The hum of the engine filled the silence. Vivian looked out the window. You think this will be enough? I watched the horizon as the road opened ahead. It won't bring her back, but it'll make them wish they'd never touched her. Caleb pressed his foot on the gas. Then, let's make sure they feel it. The headlights carved through the darkness, and the wind from the open road carried a strange calm, not peace exactly, but something close enough to keep us moving forward, 1 mile at a time. The highway stretched ahead like a dark ribbon. No streetlights, no sound but the steady rhythm of the tires and the low hum of the engine. The wind pressed against the car windows, whispering through the cracks, carrying the smell of pine and rain-soaked asphalt. Caleb drove like a man who knew the map better than his own pulse, and Vivian sat in silence, her eyes fixed on the drive sitting in my lap, the one with Mom's voice, and the proof that had cost her life. The sun was just beginning to lift, a pale streak cutting across the horizon. For a second, the world looked calm. Then Caleb spoke, voice quiet but sharp. They'll know by now that we have it. I nodded. Doesn't matter. We have names, dates, evidence. Once this hits the right hands, they can't bury it. Vivian turned toward me. The right hands? Piper, I said. She's the only one who's been fighting this from the inside. She'll know how to move it without getting us killed. Caleb grunted. Assuming she's still breathing. The road curved toward the outskirts of D.C. Not the polished skyline, but the old industrial sprawl where warehouses leaned against one another like broken teeth. Caleb slowed the car near an abandoned printing plant. The sign out front was rusted over, but I recognized the coordinates Piper had sent days ago. He killed the engine. We do this fast. If they're tracking us, they'll be here soon. We stepped out into the chill air. The ground was slick with dew, the silence thick enough to hear our own breathing. The building loomed ahead, windows boarded, door half-hinged, a hollow echo when we stepped inside. The smell hit first dust, metal, and something faintly chemical. Caleb led the way with his flashlight, the beam cutting through the dark. Vivian followed, clutching her coat tighter. She said she'd meet us here? Vivian whispered. Yeah, I said, if she's not compromised. A shadow moved at the far end of the room, then a voice. You're late. Piper stepped into the light, dressed in a dark jacket, eyes sharper than ever. She looked exhausted, but alive. You got it? I handed her the drive. She plugged it into her tablet, scanning the files. Her expression shifted from suspicion to disbelief, then grim satisfaction. This is it, she said softly. You just put 6 federal careers in the ground. Vivian crossed her arms. And my mother? Piper looked at her. She'll finally get her name cleared. Caleb stayed near the doorway, keeping watch. So what's the plan? Piper's fingers danced across the screen. Once this uploads to the secure channel, it'll hit 3 outlets at once: international press, internal oversight, and the Department of Justice. They can't silence all 3. The screen showed the progress bar crawling upward 10%, 23%, 37%. Then, faintly, the sound of an engine outside. Caleb's head snapped toward the window. We've got company. Piper's jaw tightened. You said no one followed you. They didn't, I said. They tracked the coordinates. Caleb checked his weapon. Time to move. The upload ticked past 60%. Piper unplugged the tablet halfway. I can finish it remotely. We can't stay. We moved fast through the side corridor. The concrete floor echoed under our boots. Behind us, the sound of doors slamming and voices calling out men's voices. Organized, confident. Caleb motioned us toward the fire exit. Back lot, keep low. We burst through into the pale morning light. The air was colder out here, the kind that bites at your lungs. The lot was open, a few old trucks scattered around, and a high chain-link fence on the far side. Caleb grabbed the bolt cutters from the trunk where he'd stashed them earlier and snapped the fence open just enough for us to squeeze through. Vivian climbed first, her hands shaking. I was halfway through when the first bullet hit the fence post, a sharp clang that echoed like thunder. Go, Caleb yelled. I landed hard on the other side and grabbed Vivian's arm, pulling her toward the tree line. Piper dove after us, clutching the tablet to her chest. Caleb was last through. Another shot rang out, grazing his shoulder. He didn't flinch, just turned, fired twice, and kept moving. We crashed through the brush, mud splattering our clothes. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and pine. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop until we reached a narrow dirt road that cut toward the hills. Caleb pressed a hand to his shoulder, blood seeping through his shirt. Not deep, he muttered. Vivian's voice trembled. How do they keep finding us? They're not finding us, Piper said, panting. They're following the signal from the upload. Then kill it, I said. She hesitated. If I cut it now, the data's gone. Caleb met her eyes. And if you don't, we're gone. Piper bit her lip, glanced at the tablet, then swiped the screen. The signal light blinked once, twice, then went dark. The forest went silent again. No engines, no voices, just wind. We found an old hunting cabin half a mile deeper in the woods. The door creaked when I pushed it open, dust spilling out like fog. Inside was a single table, 2 chairs, and a broken lantern. Caleb sank into one of the chairs, his face pale. I tore a strip from my sleeve and pressed it against his wound. He winced but didn't pull away. Piper sat on the floor, back against the wall, typing something on her tablet. Vivian leaned near the window, staring out into the trees. They won't stop, will they? She said quietly. No, I said. But neither will we. Piper looked up. I finished a partial upload before cutting the signal. Enough data's in circulation to make Rinaldi sweat. He'll start cleaning house. Which means he'll go after loose ends, Caleb said. Vivian turned from the window. Meaning us. Meaning himself, I corrected. He'll panic, and when men like him panic, they make mistakes. Piper nodded slowly. If you want to finish this, you'll have to draw him out. I stared at the cracked wall ahead of me, thinking, he's too careful to meet anyone directly. We need to make him think the files are incomplete, that we're holding something he can't afford to lose. Caleb gave a faint smile. You're suggesting bait. Vivian frowned. You're suggesting suicide. That. Not if he believes I'm alone, I said. The room went quiet. Piper studied me, then nodded once. It could work. Caleb shook his head. No, I'm not letting you go in blind. I met his gaze. You're not letting me do anything. This ends tonight. He took Mom from us. He used Vivian. He tried to bury all of it. I'm not giving him another chance. Vivian's voice cracked. If you go, you might not come back. I smiled faintly. If I don't go, none of us will. Caleb stood despite the blood on his sleeve. Then we go together. No, I said firmly. You'll stay close, but unseen. If he takes the bait, I need you to lock down the perimeter. When he talks, you record everything. Piper closed her tablet and stood. Where? I looked out the window, toward the faint orange glow of dawn spilling over the trees. The docks. That's where it started. That's where it ends. No one argued. By nightfall, the rain had returned soft, steady, and cold. The air smelled of salt and fuel as I walked alone across the wet concrete of the dockyard, the wind tugging at my coat. The drive was in my pocket, the decoy one I'd prepared earlier, empty but convincing. Headlights cut through the fog. A black sedan rolled to a stop 20 feet away. The door opened, and Marcus Rinaldi stepped out, sharp suit, calm expression, eyes like someone who already believed he'd won. He smiled. You should have listened to your mother. Some things aren't meant to be dug up. I took a step closer. She tried to save lives. You ended hers. He shrugged, almost amused. Collateral damage. You can't build power without breaking something. You built nothing, I said. You stole everything. His smile faded. You think you can stop me with a flash drive and a few angry words? I glanced past him. No, but she can. That's one. Rinaldi turned just as the sound of tires came from behind Caleb's truck, screeching to a stop, Piper beside him with her phone out, the live feed already streaming. Rinaldi's calm cracked. You think this will matter? It already does, I said. He reached inside his jacket, but Caleb was faster. One shot rang out, not fatal, but enough to drop him to his knees. The rain came harder. Piper stepped forward, camera steady. Vivian appeared behind her, her voice steady, clear. "This is Vivian Mercer. My mother, Dr. Rosa Mercer, was murdered for exposing Operation Halberd. This man helped bury it." Rinaldi's face twisted. "You don't know what you've done." Vivian looked down at him, unblinking. "Neither did you." The distant sound of sirens grew louder, but I didn't move. The moment held rain, gunpowder, truth hanging in the air like something sacred and dangerous all at once. When the red and blue lights finally cut through the mist, Rinaldi was silent. The evidence already in Piper's hands, the past finally dragged into daylight. I looked at Vivian, soaked and shaking but alive, and for the first time since this started, I could almost hear Mom's voice again. Not a warning, not a whisper, just quiet relief. Caleb exhaled, lowering his gun. "It's over." "Not over," I said softly. "Just done right. I'm section." The sirens closed in, echoing off the water, and as the rain washed the blood from the concrete, I realized what Mom had meant all along. Safety wasn't about hiding behind walls or running from danger. It was about standing your ground when the truth was finally ready to be seen.